5 years after becoming the leader of the necromancers, Riddick, the fugitive, is in the desert of an unknown planet, seriously injured. In addition to the bloodstains on his face, his foot is dislocated, and he puts it back in place, twisting it against a small crack in the ground. After that, Riddick goes in search of a safe place, only to encounter a species of alien dog known as dingoes. He then flees toward a cave, where he finds a type of parasite with sharp fangs and a skeletal head. The dingo dogs also invade the cave, but are attacked by a smaller form of this parasite. The creature lodges itself in one of the dogs, turning it into a ferocious monster, while the parasite becomes a type of stinger, creating an even more threatening being. The creature advances toward Riddick, but he blocks its attack using a huge bone and flees the cave. Finally, he finds a safe place in the mountains and tries to rest inside a hole, while remembering how things got to that point. After becoming Lord Marshal on the necromancer planet Helion Prime, the fugitive Riddick was revered by some and hated by many. Throughout his reign, several traitors attempted to take his crown, using spies and even his women to eliminate him. Tired of this reign, Riddick wishes to abandon the necromancers and search for his origins on the mythical planet called Furia. He then asks for help from the second-in-command, Commander Vako, and offers him a deal to find Furia in exchange for his reign. The commander accepts, as he is not only interested in ruling the necromancers, but also in achieving something greater: transcendence. Riddick does not understand what this means, but both agree to the terms and prepare for the space journey in search of Furia. Vako then orders General Krona to take Riddick to his planet, along with some of his soldiers. After a long journey, they arrive at a desert planet, but thanks to his keen senses, the Furian soon realizes that this is not his home. Realizing he has fallen into a trap, Riddick takes his daggers and begins to eliminate the traitors, one after another. Krona then fires his weapon at the warrior, but he uses one of the soldiers as a shield and throws another dagger, which the general narrowly dodges. Riddick challenges Krona to a fight, but instead, the general uses his weapons and shoots at the ground. Thanks to this, the edge of the mountain begins to collapse, taking Riddick with it. He manages to survive the fall and now needs to find a way to escape this inhospitable planet. The next day, the Furian recovers from his injuries and goes out to explore the area in search of supplies. On the way, he finds the lost puppy of one of the dingo dogs and starts taking care of it inside the cave. After that, he continues exploring the region when he sees a base created by mercenaries in the distance. However, to get there, he needs to cross the same cave where he was attacked by the parasitic creatures. Riddick then devises a plan, and using the night vision inherited by his race, he manages to capture one of the parasites in the middle of the night. Back in the cave, the Furian extracts some of the creature's venom and tests small doses on the puppy, which causes drowsiness and paralysis. Creating a makeshift syringe, Riddick uses controlled doses of the venom on himself in an attempt to develop immunity. After a day of testing, his plan works, and it's time to cross the cave and find the mercenaries' base. Arriving at the cave, Riddick encounters an even larger version of the parasite, blocking the way. Using a sword he created from a sharp piece of iron and a bone, the Furian attacks the monster, which retaliates by biting his leg. Despite this, Riddick is no longer affected by the poison, and with his sword, he cuts the creature in half. The path seems to be clear, and Riddick hears the puppy barking and is surprised to realize that it has followed him all the way. However, more creatures emerge from the puddles of water, and a huge parasite dog appears inside the cave. With its stinger, it attacks Riddick from behind, pushing him away, and the other parasites are about to attack the puppy. Fortunately, Riddick recovers from the blow, rescues the puppy, and crosses the cave, passing under the parasite dog and cutting it with his sword. Finally, the Furian manages to reach the other side of the cave and can continue his journey, now with a new companion. Days pass and the puppy becomes an adult dingo, loyal to Riddick and helping him hunt during the day. The two then find the mercenary base and look for supplies, but the place has been uninhabited for many years and all the food is spoiled. The situation only worsens when the dingo begins to bark toward the south, where a strong storm is beginning to form. Using his night vision, Riddick realizes that the situation is more serious than it seems and that they need to find a way to leave the planet as soon as possible. However, as there are no ships nearby, Riddick activates the base's computer, sending their location throughout space. With a bounty on his head, he believes that space mercenaries will soon come to the planet to collect the reward for his capture. As expected, a ship responds to the call and lands on the planet, bringing with it a team of bounty hunters. They quickly begin searching the base, but find only a message from Riddick, written in blood. The message is a warning for the group to leave a ship and get off the planet, or they will all be eliminated. However, they only brought one ship and will take Riddick to the authorities, alive or not. In addition to the mercenaries, a prisoner is being taken, but Santana orders Luna to release her to make room in the cell reserved for Riddick. Even though he disagrees, Luna obeys and lets the young woman go, with no chance of survival on that planet. However, as soon as the prisoner moves away from the ship, Santana shoots her, with Riddick watching everything from afar. Finally, the mercenary leader warns Riddick that he will find him, no matter where he is. Santana is confident that he will capture his target, but suddenly another ship begins to land on the planet. This time, a team of soldiers led by Colonel Johns appears. The two teams meet, and Santana orders Johns to leave the planet, as he arrived first and will get the reward anyway. However, the colonel has other interests and says he will just watch, but if Santana needs help, the reward will be shared. With no other choice, the mercenary agrees and orders his team to place sensors around the area so they can locate Riddick using a robotic tracker. With everything ready, the colonel warns Santana that it is best for each of them to remove a battery from their ship to prevent Riddick from escaping. The mercenary accepts the suggestion and places the two charges inside a cabinet, protected with an explosive lock. Later, the group searches the area, knowing that the Furion will take advantage of his night vision to attack them in the dark. Suddenly, the base's tracker picks up a life signal, but when they look through the cameras, they find only one of the dingo dogs nearby. Diaz then fires a warning shot to scare the animal away and continues to search for the target. What the group doesn't suspect is that this was Riddick's dog, serving as a distraction while Jin's destroying the sensors, causing the base's tracker to malfunction. Because of this, Santana deactivates the robot and decides to inspect the sensors with Rubio to see if any of them have been damaged. Shortly after, the group leader finds the sensor, but as he is about to take it back to the base, Rubio steps on a bear trap, which catches his leg. The mercenary panics and tries to crawl away, only to be caught by another trap, which destroys his head. Santana then orders Nunez to bring the scanning equipment to see how many of these traps are scattered around the site. However, the man does not respond, indicating that he has also been captured by Riddick. Hearing Santana's call, Falco and Vargas go looking for Nunez, but all they find is a trail of his blood on the ground. With their backs to each other, the two point their guns, searching for Riddick, but suddenly, everything goes silent. Looking back, Vargas realizes he is alone and sees Riddick dragging his colleague away and disappearing into the darkness. At the same moment, Luna meets Vargas and the two fire their guns, but they can't find Riddick anywhere. In just one night, Santana has lost two of his men and one is missing, forcing him to make a deal with Colonel Johns. He had already expected this and agrees to help, on the condition that he takes command and has a conversation with Riddick before handing him over to the mercenary. The mercenary accepts the terms, and Johns sends his team to search the area, starting with the place where Falco was last seen. With their advanced equipment, the colonel's group finds traces of a dingo dog, indicating that it must know where Riddick is. Then, using his weapon, Dahl locates Riddick's dog and fires a tracking projectile into its body. Thanks to this, they are able to follow the animal's trail, and Johns, along with Moss and Loxper, set off on their glider bikes to find the Furion. Minutes later, they arrive at a cave, and when they look to one side, they see a man leaning against the wall. Without hesitation, the three fire their weapons, believing that Riddick was there, but it was only Falco's body. The colonel soon realizes that it was all a distraction and that Riddick must already be at the base, devising a plan to escape the planet. As he feared, Furia arrives at the location without difficulty and observes everything from one of the ships. He soon notices that the batteries have been removed and needs to find out where they have been stored. Meanwhile, Dahl finishes changing in the bathroom and goes to continue her surveillance, when she runs into Santana. Being second in command at the site, she orders the man to check the surroundings, but the mercenary refuses to obey and knocks her down with a punch. He pins her to the ground, unaware that Riddick is already inside the base, holding a dagger in his hand. Minutes later, the colonel, along with Moss and Loxper, rush back to the base, and upon arriving, John sees a trail of blood on the floor. He fears the worst has happened, but Dahl appears, apparently unharmed, and says the blood is from a fight between her and Santana. The mercenary got the worst of it, but Dahl let him live, as only he knows the combination to open the locker. After explaining everything, Dahl calls the colonel to take a look at the battery cabinet. There, they see a message written in blood, saying fair trade, and believe that this is another warning from Riddick to let him take one of the batteries in exchange for their lives. However, Santana does not intend to hand over his ship so easily and decides to check the cabinet to see if the batteries are still there. However, even using the key, the code seems to have been changed, and if he continues to insist on opening it, the lock will explode. Furious, Santana pulls out his machete and orders Dahl to open the door himself. The two groups then point their guns at each other, but the colonel orders everyone to control themselves, otherwise they will only make Riddick's job easier. Once the situation is under control, Santana tries again, and using the key, he finally manages to open the cabinet. With the batteries recovered, Luna interprets this as a divine sign that they should leave this planet and leave Riddick behind. However, no one takes him seriously and they decide to continue the hunt, unaware that Riddick is watching them through an opening in the ceiling. Shortly after, the colonel calls the team to a meeting and they begin to plan a capture strategy. In the middle of the conversation, Moss goes to check the closet again, when he notices that the ceiling passage is open. Suspecting that someone has entered, he pulls out his gun and goes to check behind the closet, when he is held up by Riddick, who points his dagger at his neck. Larkspur notices something is wrong and goes to see what happened, finding Moss sitting in a chair in shock. He says that Riddick appeared, and when he looks inside the closet, Larkspur realizes that the fugitive managed to escape, taking the batteries with him. Realizing he underestimated his opponent, Colonel Johns decides to reinforce security and capture the fugitive once and for all. Meanwhile, Riddick prepares to escape, but he needs to be quick, as the huge storm is getting closer and closer. Back at the base, Dahl suggests leaving the planet, using the batteries from one ship in the other. However, Vargas explains that this is impossible, because if the batteries are not fully compatible, there is a risk that the ship will short-circuit and explode before they can reach space. The two teams are running out of options, and the only solution is to hunt Riddick across the planet. However, to everyone's surprise, Furion himself contacts the group through Falco's communicator. Riddick tells them to look south, and finally reveals himself to everyone, with the storm intensifying behind him. The colonel, along with Santana and Diaz, heads towards Riddick, with everyone dropping their weapons along the way. When they meet, Riddick asks if they have considered his proposal, or if they will try their luck at getting the reward. However, Colonel Johns replies that he is not interested in the money, but in knowing what happened 10 years ago during the eclipse on planet M344. Upon hearing this, Riddick immediately remembers Officer William and discovers that he was John's son. However, there is no time to talk about it, and the Furion warns that in less than 24 hours the storm will reach the base, and the parasitic creatures will infest the entire place. So he proposes a new deal, where he will leave one of the batteries in one place, while he takes the other and escapes in one of the ships. Riddick lets the group think about the proposal, but Santana will not give up on the reward and pulls a gun to eliminate his target. However, the dingo dog jumps out of the bushes to attack the man and saves his owner's life. Riddick tries to intervene, but the colonel gives the order to Dahl, who is standing by with his weapon, and fires tranquilizer shots at the Furion. Even though he can't move, Riddick does his best to help his companion, but unfortunately, Santana pulls out a gun and eliminates the animal. Diaz tries to help his leader, but the colonel takes control of the situation and knocks him unconscious, doing the same to the Furion. Hours later, Riddick wakes up inside the base and Johns once again demands to know what happened during the eclipse. Riddick replies that he was being taken to prison by William and his team, but the ship crashed on the eclipse planet. William was one of the survivors, but ended up losing his life during the escape, and Riddick refuses to give details of what happened. Seeing that the prisoner will not talk, the colonel lets Santana finish the job and collect his reward. He then orders Diaz to hold the prisoner and prepares his blade to remove Riddick's head. However, just as he is about to deliver the final blow, the storm reaches the base and the robotic tracker picks up more signs of life approaching the base. The group then goes out to check what is happening and finds the place surrounded by parasitic creatures. Faced with this additional problem, the colonel orders everyone to hide inside the base, but one of the parasitic dogs jumps against the window and tries to invade the place. Larkspur quickly eliminates it with his weapon, but another creature appears and pierces the wall with its stinger, striking the soldier. Frightened, Moss retreats toward the cabinets, only to be captured by another parasite, which strikes him with its stinger and pulls him up through the ceiling. The soldiers and mercenaries despair and try to seal all the passages, while Riddick begins to laugh at the whole situation. Finally, he proposes one last deal and orders the group to remove his chains so they can go get the batteries from his hiding place. Faced with this critical situation, Johns accepts the deal, but when he tries to free Riddick, Santana pulls out his blade and orders the colonel to step back. The guy is tired of all this and intends to eliminate the Furion, but when he tries to hit him with his weapon, Riddick blocks the attack with his foot. He then kicks the blade toward the ceiling and pushes the madman against the wall. Finally, when the weapon begins to fall from the ceiling, Riddick catches it in midair and kicks the blade toward Santana, hitting him in the head. Now that everyone is certain that Riddick lives up to his reputation, the group decides it is best to release him and continue with their plan. After that, they head to the ship to get the gliders, but Vargas ends up being bitten by one of the smaller parasites and does not survive due to the high doses of poison. With one less mercenary, Dahl and Luna stay behind to take care of the ships, while Riddick, Johns, and Diaz set off in search of the batteries. Thanks to his night vision, the Furion can see his way in the dark and encounters more parasite dogs, but melts them using the bike's thrusters. Riddick continues to accelerate and reaches the battery site, but Diaz tries to catch up with him and ends up pushing Johns, who is thrown off the mountainside. After recovering from the fall, the Colonel begins to hear the sound of the parasites approaching and points his gun, not knowing where to aim. Luckily, Riddick arrives and offers him a ride, with the two heading together towards the cave. Finally, they arrive at the hideout and Riddick begins digging for the batteries, when Johns confronts him once again, asking what happened to his son. Riddick then reveals that when they faced the eclipse, William was out of control trying to use a forbidden substance and almost eliminated a boy to save himself. Even though he was a wanted criminal, Riddick defended the boy and eliminated William to save him. Johns does not believe his son would be capable of such a thing, but Riddick assures him that the use of that substance affected William's mind. Finally, he finds the two battery units and everyone can leave that planet, but Diaz has other plans and knocks Johns down with a blow. The man intends to take the batteries and eliminate Riddick to get the reward, but the Furion is not intimidated and the two begin a confrontation. Diaz takes advantage, hitting Riddick with punches and incapacitating him, holding his arms behind his back. Not satisfied, he lifts the Furion into the air and is about to break his arms, but Riddick resists, thanks to his superhuman strength. He delivers a double kick to the mercenary and jumps toward the hole where the batteries were. Diaz recovers from the attack and grabs his gun to eliminate his opponent once and for all. However, Riddick jumps out of the hole, where he had hidden his sword, and with one blow removes the mercenary's left arm. Before losing his life, Diaz fires his weapon, destroying the motorcycle's engines to prevent Riddick and Johns from escaping. Now that they are without transportation, the only option left for the two is to walk all the way back, which is infested with more parasite dogs. So, carrying the remaining batteries and weapons, the two set off through the rain and the dark desert, with terrible creatures lurking. Despite the slim chances of success, the two manage to deal with the monsters without much difficulty. However, in an unexpected attack, Riddick is struck by the sting of one of the parasites and falls to the ground, seriously injured. Seeing the man who eliminated his son lying on the ground, Johns throws a smoke grenade to attract the creatures and runs towards Riddick. However, instead of helping him, the Colonel turns his back on him, takes the second battery, and leaves, leaving him alone. At the mercenaries' base, Luna picks up a life signal, and when she opens the gate, she comes across the Colonel, who hands over the two batteries and tells them to get out of there. Dahl finds this suspicious, as Riddick would not be defeated so easily, but Johns just tells them to leave as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Riddick sees some heated minerals around him, and picking one up, he places it on his body, cauterizing the wound. Although he has recovered, Riddick finds himself surrounded by dozens of parasitic dogs and is forced to climb a mountain to escape the creatures. When he reaches the top, Riddick is already exhausted and the creatures are getting closer and closer, but he tries to resist until the end. Hope seems lost, but suddenly, proton shots begin to hit the monsters, which are destroyed in a few seconds. Looking up, Riddick sees Colonel John's ship, who has changed his mind and orders Dahl to rescue the Furion and take him back to base. Now that both ships are recharged, Johns and his team return home, while Riddick sets off into the universe in search of his home planet. However, before beginning his search, Riddick sets out to resolve some unfinished business and finds Krona's ship. The necromancer is praying by the window when the Furion appears unexpectedly, pointing his dagger at Krona's neck. He then demands to know where Vako is, as he believes he has betrayed him and intends to take revenge. However, Krona reveals that Vako did not know about his plan and that the general acted in secret to remove Riddick from power and give his place to a true necromancer. Riddick then eliminates the traitor by slitting his throat and asks one of the servants if the commander is still alive. However, she replies that Vako has finally achieved the transcendence he sought so much. Looking out the window, Riddick sees a huge portal in space, leading to another universe, where the commander has gone in search of transcendence. Whether Riddick found Vako and his home planet Furia is a question that remains unanswered. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.